So you've got my optimization tool, but how do you use it? So what I'm going to do is take you through step by step on how to set the whole thing up, and then we'll look at how you can quickly use it to do some investigations for your RPM changes, your different gearing and diff ratios. So hang in there. I'll try and whistle through as quick as I can, with the idea that you can always pause this and rewatch it again if you miss anything. Okay, so let's get started. So the gearing optimization tool basically calculates four things: your best gear shift RPM, your best diff ratios, i.e. you can try different ratios and it gives you an optimization suggestion based on different ratios you might have in the locker. You can go the full hog as well and look at, right, okay, well I can actually optimize all of my gears. So what gear ratio should I put in terms of each gear and each diff? It also calculates the top speed that you can achieve along the way, which is kind of like a minor thing that comes out along the way. So the requirements or refinements, depending on how you look at it, there are 9 of them. And what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to go through each one and explain how you might get that, where it goes, how it all plugs together. So really you can just follow this through and go, okay, I get that data for my car, plug it into exactly this point in the spreadsheet, and then everything will just hopefully calculate for you automatically. So the investigation outcomes are principally into 2 different phases. So you've got the basic thing, which is around determining the best gear change RPM for your engine, for your racing car. So forget changing the actual gear ratios or the diff or anything. Plug in your racing car information, all the stuff that you've got. What are the best RPM values to change in each gear? And the more observant will notice that we will now be doing 6 gears rather than just 5, which is what we had before. The other thing where it becomes a little bit more in depth is the gearing investigations. So we'll look at the best, well, we can look at let's say the best diff options, the best gearbox ratios for both at maximum speed, so your vehicle's Vmax, what speed it can reach, but also trying to optimize those ratios even more for a specific track. There's some detailed articles, as you can see, linked here. What I'm going to do is make these slides available as a handout. So if you're a subscriber, you'll get the link to where you can download these slides as a PDF. So you can click those links in case you haven't seen those articles, and you can also use it a bit later on to fill in some of the blanks where we're looking to gather the information. So let's get into the requirements and the refinements bit. So the first one of the 9 is the gearbox ratios of final drive. So the example data you can see here on the left. So this is what will be in the sheet when you open it up. So your job now is to fill in the data that you have on the right. I suggest just using what you have. Just the first thing that you get given, the first thing that you have with your racing car. Just use what you have. The data goes in the top left here. You can see with a little circle. So that's the area in the spreadsheet that you need to put the data. With the diff ratios, you get the option to add 3 options in. So with the diff analysis, it will run through all sorts of different diff ratio settings and try and find you the most optimum setting for your gears, for your car, etc. But it might be that you don't have what it recommends. It might be that you only got, in this case, 2 or 3 fixed ratios that you can use. So here you put those in. So I've got 3.9, 4.1 and 4.4. So just put yours in the box, and it will then tell you It will work out the optimum, then it will tell you which of your ones you should actually use. So the engine torque curve is now on a separate tab. So if you've used a previous version of the sheet, please look out for that. And so the engine tab is called engine data, and your information goes in this red circle, which is what the tab looks like. You have to have everything in Newton meters, and ideally you want to fill the box in, but you don't have to. Just put in the numbers you do have. There are some refinements with regards to the engine data. So the beginning and the end of the curve can be quite sensitive to the maths. So particularly if you're hitting a rev limiter on your dyno, for example, the torque curve will drop off. Don't put that limit in, because it will really wreck the fitting line, which is required for the calculations. You can double check that. I'll put this chart in here on the right, and you can see that the data I've got in this example is really nicely fitted, because there's two lines on top of each other. If you put your engine data in and you get this sort of crazy dotted line going all over the place, and particularly this number here, this R squared number, being, sort of a low number maybe, and a low number being, I don't know, less than 96% would be a low number. Just have a look again at the numbers that you're putting in for the beginning and the end of the torque curve, so that you try and get a nice fit. There's all sorts of different torque curves in the world. Lots of different vehicles have got different ways of variable valve timing, etc., etc., etc. So it's just, this is trying to do its best to fit your curve to something we can use in the calculations. So just be aware of that. You've got this option here for, I'll put this, so there's like I call them scratch pads, where you've got like engine 1, 2 and 3, so you can play with different types of engines in case you've done some work on it or whatever. If you have got your data and it's in pound-feet, just drop it in the bottom of this tool here, and it will convert your pound-feet, feet-pound, whatever, torque into Newton meters, and put that at the top here, and then use the Newton meters in this chart here. So a way to get your engine torque curve, this, you might only have it on a piece of paper, and so what you need to do is basically just read off periodically along the line and create your table like that. So again, this is a foot-pound one, which would then need to convert into Newton meters. Easy one now, vehicle mass. So just put in your vehicle mass. It's not that sensitive, but I would suggest putting in the vehicle mass at the beginning of your race rather than the end or an average. And the reason for that is because the mass in this tool is really used at the beginning for your traction calculations. So that's, for your getaway and your initial start, it's going to have the most impact at that point. So I recommend putting in the mass, your sort of starting weight mass. Frontal area and coefficient of drag, again, they're in the top left up here. It's possible you don't have that information. So what I've done here is to try and help you calculate that. So what we do is you take the width of your car, the height of your car, and then this kind of fudge factor which scales this number times this one to give you this one. Let me explain a bit more. So there's a way of doing this with a grid. So if you take a picture of your car from the front, get it nice and square. This is not actually that good a picture, but hopefully you'll get the idea. So you write down low, nice and square. Take a picture of your car, then measure the width and the height, and then put this grid on. So I've just done this grid in PowerPoint, just dragged a grid out, I think there's 8 squares by 10 or something, but you know, you can put more squares in if you really want to get into it. And then you'll be able to scale that grid to your picture. And then all you need to do is count the squares where your car is not. So where the bodywork of your car is not filling up a square, count those up, and then take them away from the total number of squares, and then divide that number by the total number of squares. So for example, I've got 80 squares here, say 10 of them are where my car isn't. I do 80 minus 10, which is 70, and then 70 divided by 80 to get my percentage. Hopefully that will help you. Coefficient of drag. So unless you've been to the wind tunnel, you probably don't have this number. But I found a really good website on the Wikipedia, or a really good table on the Wikipedia website. The link is here again. If you've got the handout, just click the link. You'll get the data straight away. My car, in this example, you know, it's closest to a K2M7, so it's 0.7, which is absolutely rubbish, really. But that's what it is. So have a look on here for your car, or at least your shape of car, and try and pick the number that's going to make the most sense. I mean, 0.3 seems to be a fairly solid number for like a hatchback type car. Start adding wings on the back, it's gonna increase it. So just use this table and see if that helps you out if you don't have the numbers yourself. Tyre size and tyre friction goes here. So we've got a little box we need to fill in. The tyre size data is here, and you can read it off the sidewall of your tyre. So the width, the profile, the rim size. Whoever invented tyre data naming, they must have had a big argument, because that 185 is in millimeters, that's a proportion, and then that's in inches. Anyway, I have no idea what they were thinking, but read it off the side of your tyre and you'll get that fine. The tyre friction and mu is really important, and you're going to struggle to get a good number, I'm afraid, unless you have some tyre data that, you know, to hand. What I've tried to do here is I've helped with this link. So if you click this link, you'll get to this picture, and there's quite a good article on these guys doing a test. It's not for racing cars, but it'll still give you an idea. To give you an idea for a range, like a sort of average road car tyre might be 1.2, and then a full formula type slick might go up to 2. I'm using this sort of semi-slick tyre on a dry track, so I've gone for 1.5 or 1.6. That kind of range. It mainly affects the launch, that traction limit, but it's still quite important. Now I've put this table here. You can also see how the friction coefficient changes with different weather. So, you know, sliding around on ice and snow, you can see this kind of makes sense. So the lower the number, the less grip you've got. Slip ratio is starting to get a little bit more complicated in terms of tyre dynamics, but you can kind of see it's a non-linear thing. So it goes up and goes over, and that's why this makes this really difficult. So have a read of the article, be aware of, this is why, you know, I've got less grip in the wet, because I've got less coefficient of friction. So pick a sensible number. I would say your number is going to be between 1 and 1.5, unless you're running a full slick, where it's going to be 1.7 to 2. And again, 2 is going to be tyre blankets, dry, grippy, Barcelona type track surface. Okay. Air temperature is in the top right. Feel free to change it. Basically, the hotter the air, the less air resistance there is. The default's 20, just feel free to leave it at 20 if that's going to be easier for you. Doesn't make a massive amount of difference. The track height, so this is the track height above sea level. So where are you racing? Again, the default is 0 meters. It does have actually some impact. And you can see here, I thought I'd pull in these from the Formula One grid. You've got Azerbaijan, which is basically below sea level, which should be interesting. And then you've got, I haven't actually run it with 0 and minus numbers, but I think it still works. And Mexico is like way up. I mean, this is like really high, which is why everyone gets quite upset about it, because that is really quite high. Clearly, at that kind of height, your engine curve, torque curve will be different anyway. So unless you have one and you're running around there, I mean, if you are running at that kind of track, maybe you do have one. So it would be worth adding that and then updating your engine curve and then updating your height above sea level accordingly. It does make a difference in terms of the top speeds and the Vmaxes and stuff like that, particularly when you're getting something as high as Mexico. I would, if you're not sure, just leave it at 0, or if you can get the information, pop it in by all means, because it will make a difference. Finally, number 9, the track velocity profile. So this is just below the temperature stuff. And so the way this works is to give you some, it does two things really. It helps with the optimization of the gears and the diff when you're not able to get to Vmax on a track because it is particularly short, has a particularly short straights, or your car doesn't have a lot of power. So that's one thing. So if you put in a figure here that is below what the calculations think you can get as a Vmax, if you put in a figure here for your track Vmax, then it will use that instead of the calculated possible max. So just be aware of that. Whenever I'm doing demos or practicing with this thing, I always forget about that. So just be aware that if you put your track profile in, that will become the limit for the optimization and all the analysis that goes on. But the other thing it does is helps you look at your gear shift positions. So you can look at, well, am I going to be between gears in the middle of this corner, or can I actually optimize the gearing such that I've got a better and more logical shift position? So there's two things about optimizing your gear shifts. It's the giving yourself the most chance for acceleration, but equally making it most usable and not unsettling the car for the driver. So there's kind of, this bit gets a little bit nuanced, but if you can have the option to change your diff or your gear ratios, then this can really give you some perspective on like, okay, well, we're getting too close to second gear changes or whatever. Let's have a little look at some stuff. So the way in which you get the profile, so here is a typical velocity profile from Donington in the UK. So you've got distance along the bottom, and you've got speed, so distance along the bottom, and then speed up the side. So distance being, so that's 0 meters, and then I think it's however long, 3.2 kilometers all the way around. So that will be 1.5, all the way around. So that's the distance. So if you scroll along here, this chart represents where you are on the track in terms of the distance you've covered, and then this with the speed up and down shows you how fast you're going at that particular point on the track. So where the little cursor is at the moment, I'm just going down the back straight, and I'm just about to brake. So I'm just coming into the braking zone there. So I'm going as fast as I will be on this straight, and then in a split second I'm going to be hard on the brakes and come around this corner, which is what this bit will do here. So in terms of straights, there are 5 at Donington. So you've got the first straight, which kind of starts off, I was kind of making it here. I mean, you can do these however you want, but it makes sense for me to do it this way. So the first straight has the start finish line on it. And so it'll start from around here and go to there. Yeah, so that's the first one. And the second one is from the exit of the corner, sort of down the hill probably to the old hairpin, through the old hairpin, up the hill, around here, into this one, fourth one, which is this little straight here, slow down again, around there, and then the fifth one is all the way down the back straight, coming into the chicane at the end here. Okay, and what you do is you simply read off the bottom and top figures of the velocity profile. So these are all conveniently all in miles an hour, which I'm going to have to convert to kilometers an hour. Not a problem. So you can say, okay, so got to about 96 miles an hour before I braked, and then I brake down to 55 for the middle of the corner, and then the next straight starts from 97 all the way down to the old hair, the braking point with the old hairpin. Do you see what I mean? So these are your straights, and you can pull those into the table. So when it says track V min and track V max, straight number. So you've got straight number 1, which is this one. I've converted them to kilometers. Sorry about that. But anyway, so 54 miles an hour goes to 86 kilometers an hour. 96 goes to 54. You can see you can take these numbers, transpose them into the table in kilometers an hour, and then you've got your velocity profile. Sticking with the velocity profile, it's right up here. It actually appears on this chart too. So this chart here is the thrust chart, which is at the bottom in the middle. And these values here, if you can see, they appear in these little horizontal lines here. So you've got the first straight, the second straight, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, with the minimum speed and the maximum speed. And what I said earlier about when you can start to use this to look at your change and when they're sensible or not. So you've got this one here, which is on the first straight, which is kind of suggesting that I'm almost going to need to change into second gear with this particular car at that point, and also into the second, but not quite. So I mean, that's probably quite good. So you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get the maximum there. This one here particularly, I don't know if you can see that very well, but that third to fourth, so this fourth one on the fourth straight is saying that really I should dip into second ever so briefly for like a split second and then get back into third, and at the end of the fourth straight I should be just dipping into fifth and then go back into fourth again. So they're kind of things as a driver you just don't want to do. But this is going to tell you, okay, well, actually, I've got a chance now. If I can change my ratios a little bit, I've got a chance to sort of squidge those around so that I'm not in these really sensitive zones where I'm just at the end of the straight and I need to change up and then change back down again, because that's going to be slow and unsettle the car. So it's quite powerful. It's a bit advanced, you might say, but at least you know you can do that. So here we got the two things from before. So if you remember, these are the two outputs you can get. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through a gear change RPM, and then look at these 4 gearing optimizations. Again, if you want the detailed articles on those, please click the links from the handout. So here we are in the tool, and the RPM calculations are in this box here, in this table. They're covered on each of the little lines here on the thrust chart, and then I've also got this rounded to the nearest 100 RPM chart here. The idea was that you could sort of print that out and stick it on the steering wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, for the exact same car, with the same engine, same aerodynamics, everything, I'm just going to swap out the gearbox and the diff, and I'm going to change it to the 6-speed one that I've done before. So I'm going to copy in this 6-speed box into here. So when you do this, do it with paste values, which is that one. Okay, you can see everything's kind of changed. Now for the gear optimization, this has made quite a big difference. So, and bear in mind, it's the same engine. It's the same engine, the same tyres, the same aerodynamics, everything's the same. And yet now, with this gearing, we've got a totally different set of ratio, or a totally different set of times to change gear. So now, I think that before it was over 7,000, this is just under 7,000, dropping down a little bit less, and now we're consistently 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5 for each first, second, and third, and then we're just dropping down, you know, to 5.3, 5.3, 5.3, all the way into fifth and up to 175. You can also see that it's slightly tighter packed, low down, and you know, this is a really good set of ratios for this engine with this car. So if you want to investigate different types of diff, you can simply change them here. So at the moment we've got a 3.9 diff, but say you had a 4.1 diff that you want to put in. What does it do? So you can see, oh, all of these move. But the thing is that they all move, but it's like, well, so what? All of the gear change RPMs are the same. They haven't changed. So what is it really doing? So let's have a little look at some of the stuff that is going on over here. So you've got the maximum speed that this racing car can go, the maximum achievable speed, which is the less of the area or the gearing. So at the moment the gearing is 196 is the maximum we can get to with this gearing. So we'll run out of steam based on our aero limitations rather than our gearing limitations. The track looks like quite a long one because I haven't changed it, so the track is not a limiting factor either. So we're basically doing a drag race here. So how can I tell if this 4.1 is better than the 3.9? I mean, they just basically look the same. Well, if you've done the diff video, you will know that it's all about this total area here, which is the losses in these little areas here. So this is 8,078, and the idea is to get this number as low as possible. So if I go 4.1, it goes to 6,029, so that is much less than the 3.9. So let's go a bit more. So I've got a 4.4 in the box, put that in. So yep, that's even gone down even more. So that's 4,800. I'm still checking. So my gearing is 182 kilometers an hour. My theoretical max speed hasn't changed because I haven't changed anything else other than the diff. So say I try a 5.0 diff, for example. Let's go pretty extreme. Now the area has increased, surprisingly, and we're also now limited not by the aero but by the gearing. So the gearing is too short for a VMAX approach. So we will only get to 161 kilometers an hour with this gearing. So it's below our aero gearing, below our aero limit. So if you had a track where getting to the top speed of the car was important, then this would be too short, this gearing, because you're not going to get there. You're going to get to 161 and top out, either on the rev limiter or nearabouts. So that's something to be aware of on the when changing the diff. So if I put that up to 4.4. So over here we've got the diff analysis. And you can put in 3 diffs that you may have available. So I'll put a 3.5, a 3.9 and a 4.4 and press run diff analysis. Okay, so that's already the current one. And so what it does is it shows you the best diff to use out of any diff, and then it shows you the best diff from your choices that you should use. And you can also have a look at this chart here to double check how sensitive that choice is. So if you could change your gear ratios completely, and so we've now got a 6-speed box and a vinyl drive, what should they be for this engine to maximize your acceleration? This engine and this setup of tires and such like. Well, if you go to not developer but to solver and run this solver, let's see what it says. So at the moment we've got a 5-speed. It's changed it to a full 6-speed, and that's come out quite nicely actually. So you can see, okay, so that's 1,847, which is significantly less than 8,000. So we are going to be a lot faster with this this set of ratios. So this is our 6-speed ratios. So do they make sense for our track? Yeah, this is the one we had in the demo one, so you can see, oh, it's quite tight. So what if we wanted to make some adjustments to that? How would that look? So if I went to a 3.9 diff, for example, okay, so there's a bit more gap here between the lines. So this 4th to 5th change has now come way back, so it's definitely going to be worth changing up into 5th gear on this straight 4. It's near the end, but it's still worth it. It's going to be much quicker. It actually it's actually reduced the area a little bit, which is interesting. We're also, so we're in 1st to 2nd, so we're actually also in a nice place here for 3rd gear. So we're just going to be, that's going to be in 3rd gear, that's 4th gear, that's 5th gear, and then we've got a little bit in 6th gear. But again, yeah, that seems to make a nice spread there where we're not too close at any key point around the track between gears. So that's worked out quite nicely. In terms of top speed, what do we need to get to? 156, and we can do 158. Let's see what would happen. So that will work. So all we've done is change the diff. So if I run that and see what this looks like. Okay. So what diff should we run? So it's saying, well, we should run these kind of longer diff 4.7 at that point on that one. So really, yeah, it's looking at, for Vmax it's 3.5, so it's basically looking at 3.5. So here we go, we are 156. So yeah, so we're in a kind of a 3.9 diff, which is actually what I chose, which is a bit lucky. So you can also see it's a fairly non-linear relationship, but again, that is because of the way the gears work. Okay. So what if we change more than diff? What if we changed all the ratios again? Let's try that. See what this comes up with. Wow, okay. So it's really low, 1,000. So what it's done here is it's tried to optimize all the gears, all 6 gears, for our new top speed 156 kilometers an hour. And in fact, that is our new achievable speed. So it's adjusts all the gearing, so we actually top out 156 in sixth gear, which might be what you want to do. I mean, it's certainly you've got less losses by doing that. I mean, these gear curves are right up on the line there, and that's the second gear is sensible. It's not too crazy into wheel spin. Now, what are the splits like? So there's this one here, which is a bit tight. So any time that it's really close on there, that's going to be potentially causing you a bit of a headache. That one will probably be okay. You just probably won't change up into into sixth at the end of the third straight, but you're going to be right on the limit. That's not too bad because it's quite a short. It's quite a short straight anyway. That one. You're going up the hill, and whether you'd probably lose time. So, but there's a fourth to. Yeah, this is the only bit that really would worry me if I was going to recommend those ratios. So we could maybe look at tweaking that a little bit. So which is that's first, second, third, fourth. So that's this one. That's the optimisation number. So if I go to 5, 4, 5, does that? Yeah, that's sort of tweaked it a bit, hasn't it? It sort of moved it a bit further away. And again, it's right on the cusp. But I think you'll be alright with that. And it's gone up a bit, but not too much. So you've still got a great set of ratios there, really usable. And so there we go. So that's an example of how you can, if you can change your ratios, how you can slightly optimize the suggested ratios for a given track for the different corners. So success. So I've shown you how you can populate the tool, how you can get all the data if you haven't got it. Hopefully you do have it, but if you haven't got it, hopefully you've got now some also solutions on how you can get hold of the information, what's important and what's not. I've also done a couple of demos on how you use the tool and how you can actually start to do these investigations in terms of choosing your gear ratios. It does give you some certainty, it gives you some clarity on what's important, and you'll know that having run through an exercise like this, even though I've kind of maybe talked a little bit longer than anticipated, it's still only a few minutes, and you've now got very much certainty on what gear ratios to run, what diff to have, when to change gear, and also some idea about your what top speed you should be expecting for your car. So hopefully that's really useful for you, and will help you at least park the gearing concern for now and in the future. So best luck with the sheet, and let me know how you get on.